The cold wind cut through the streets of Redwood Falls, wrapping them in a dense fog on that farewell morning. The silence was broken only by the rustling of dry leaves under the feet of those present and by the slow steps of the police officers carrying the flag-draped coffin. The funeral of Ethan Walker, a respected officer, brought together not only friends and family, but also those who wanted to understand what had really happened. Ethan was known for his dedication and integrity, and his sudden disappearance during an operation caused strangeness among colleagues. Father Michael Graves conducted the ceremony with solemn words, but there was something in his posture that didn't go unnoticed by some. Among those present, Ryan Carter, a former detective with a keen nose for suspicious details, felt something was wrong with this story. The priest's hands trembled slightly as he spoke, his eyes darting nervously across the crowd. When the coffin was being lowered, an unexpected sound cut through the silence. Max, the German Shepherd K9 who had always accompanied Ethan on his operations, began barking insistently. The dog's behavior wasn't normal. He not only barked, but dug the earth near the gravestone, as if trying to say something. Discomfort spread among those present, glances crossed, seeking an explanation. Some tried to calm the animal, but Max wouldn't yield. Father Michael showed unusual nervousness, avoiding looking directly at the dog. The police chief intervened and asked for Max to be removed from the site. But Ryan had already caught enough. He knew police dogs' instincts well and knew that behavior wasn't random. Something was wrong. Shortly after the funeral, Ryan decided to visit Sarah, Ethan's wife. The woman seemed downcast, but amid the pain, she revealed something that caught his attention. Ethan had shown concern in recent weeks, acting restlessly and leaving the house late at night without explanation. Furthermore, on the night before the incident, he received a strange call and left in a hurry, leaving his jacket behind. Going through the officer's belongings, Sarah found a folded note inside the jacket pocket, which read, "If anything happens to me, look in the church basement." The message sent a chill down Ryan's spine. Why would Ethan leave this note? What could he have discovered? Even stranger was the fact that important documents had disappeared without formal documentation. The former detective decided to follow the lead, and, upon investigating the precinct records, noticed that the emergency call made by Ethan before his disappearance had vanished from the archives. How could a simple error erase such an important record? The feeling that something was being covered up grew stronger. Determined to seek answers, Ryan returned to the cemetery and observed Max, who still remained restless. The dog began digging near the gravestone again, and this time, Ryan let him continue. That's when he found a scratched badge, partially buried, as if someone had tried to hide it in a hurry. The discovery raised even more questions. He needed to enter the church without drawing attention. That evening, as Ryan walked back to his car, he noticed something else, a black sedan that seemed to be following him. He took a few random turns through the neighborhood, and sure enough, the car maintained its distance but stayed with him. His police instincts kicked in, and he knew this was no coincidence. Whoever was watching him clearly didn't want him asking questions about Ethan Walker. But why? What could be so important that someone would go to such lengths to keep it hidden? As the sun set over Redwood Falls, Ryan realized he was about to uncover something much bigger than he had initially imagined. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. In the middle of the night, Ryan made his way to the Redwood Falls Church. The locked doors posed no challenge for his former detective skills, and a small side window provided his entry point. Inside, the environment was cold and silent, with moonlight filtering through the stained glass windows, casting eerie shadows across the ancient wooden pews. The air felt heavy with secrets, and each creaking floorboard seemed to whisper warnings. As he descended into the basement, the beam of his flashlight revealed rows of old boxes stacked against moisture-stained walls. The basement appeared ordinary at first glance, but Ryan's trained eye noticed something peculiar: recent scuff marks on the floor, leading to a particular corner. Following these marks, he discovered a locked trapdoor. Around it, several old boxes were strategically placed, as if someone had tried to conceal its existence. While searching the area, Ryan found an old recorder hidden under a dust-covered piece of furniture. When he turned it on, static filled the air, but a muffled voice could be identified in the background. It was Ethan. The recording was damaged, but he could distinguish some words. "I discovered, need to get out of here. The priest." The audio cut off abruptly, leaving Ryan with more questions than answers. The connection between Ethan and the church became more evident. Father Michael knew something, but to what extent was he involved? The next day, Ryan observed the priest's movements and noticed he took an unusual path to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Following his instinct, he waited for the right moment and investigated the location. To his surprise, he found evidence that someone had been kept there. A plate with food remains and cut ropes indicated that someone had been recently held captive and had either escaped or been moved elsewhere. The situation was escalating quickly. Back in town, Ryan realized he was being followed again. He changed his route, taking side streets, but the black car behind him remained persistent. When he finally managed to lose it, he returned to Sarah's house and found the door slightly ajar. On the floor lay an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single typed sentence: "If you continue asking questions, you might discover something you shouldn't." Sarah's hands trembled as she read the note. "There's something else," she whispered, leading Ryan to Ethan's study. She pulled out a locked box from behind a false panel in the bookshelf. "Ethan never told me what was in it, but he made me promise that if anything happened to him, I should give it to someone I trust completely." The box was heavy, and whatever was inside rattled slightly when moved. As Ryan examined the box, he noticed something unusual about its construction. The lock wasn't just any ordinary lock. It was a sophisticated mechanism with a series of small indentations around its edge. He recognized this type of security device. It was typically used for storing highly sensitive materials. But what could Ethan have possessed that required such protection? A sudden noise from outside made them both freeze. Through the window, Ryan caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. Someone was watching the house. Sarah's face paled as she quickly hid the box again. "They've been here before," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Last week, while I was sleeping, I heard someone in the house. When I checked the next morning, nothing was missing, but things had been moved slightly. They were looking for something." Ryan's mind raced. The box, the church basement, Father Michael's strange behavior, and now these watchers, all pieces of a puzzle that was becoming increasingly dangerous to solve. But one thing was clear: whatever Ethan had discovered was significant enough to make powerful people nervous. As he left Sarah's house that night, carefully checking for followers, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled into something much larger and more complex than a simple disappearance. The quiet town of Redwood Falls was harboring secrets that someone was willing to go to great lengths to protect. The next morning, Ryan sat in his car outside the church, watching as Father Michael nervously paced the courtyard, constantly checking his phone. The priest's behavior had changed dramatically since the funeral, his usual calm demeanor replaced by visible anxiety. As the morning service began, Ryan noticed something odd. Instead of his regular routine, Father Michael rushed through the ceremony, his hands shaking as he handled the sacred objects. After the service, Ryan followed the priest at a safe distance. Father Michael drove to the outskirts of town, stopping at an old diner. Through the window, Ryan observed as the priest met with a well-dressed man he'd never seen before. The stranger carried a briefcase and spoke in intense whispers, occasionally glancing around the diner. The meeting lasted exactly 7 minutes before the mysterious man left in a silver luxury car with tinted windows. Meanwhile, Sarah had been doing some investigating of her own. She discovered that in the weeks before his disappearance, Ethan had been making frequent trips to the city library's archives. When she visited the library herself, the elderly librarian Mrs. Henderson remembered Ethan well. "He spent hours looking through old town records," she said, "particularly those from the church's founding in 1887. He seemed especially interested in something about the original construction plans." Back at Sarah's house, Ryan finally managed to open the mysterious box. Inside, they found architectural drawings of the church, but these weren't ordinary blueprints. They showed additional rooms and passages that didn't appear in any official records. More importantly, there was a series of photographs showing what appeared to be valuable artifacts being moved in the dead of night. The timestamps on the photos were from just 3 weeks before Ethan's disappearance. The box also contained a USB drive. When they plugged it into Sarah's computer, they found hundreds of files, most of them encrypted. However, one document was accessible, a scanned letter dated 1887, written by the church's founder, Theodore Graves. The letter mentioned a sacred trust and items of immeasurable value that needed to be protected at all costs. More intriguingly, it referenced a secret society called the Guardians of the Sacred Light. As they dug deeper into the files, a pattern began to emerge. The church wasn't just a place of worship, it was built to protect something. The basement that Ryan had explored was only the beginning. According to the blueprints, there was an entire network of tunnels and chambers hidden beneath the church, their entrances carefully concealed behind centuries-old stonework. Sarah suddenly remembered something else. The night before he disappeared, Ethan mentioned a name, Elizabeth Graves. He said she was the key to understanding everything. Ryan's research revealed that Elizabeth was Theodore Graves' daughter, and she had disappeared mysteriously in 1888, shortly after the church's completion. Her diary, preserved in the city archives, contained cryptic references to the truth behind the sacred facade. That evening, as Ryan and Sarah pored over the documents, Max, who had been staying with Sarah since the funeral, suddenly became alert. His ears perked up and he moved to the window, growling softly. Through the curtains, they spotted 3 men in dark suits positioning themselves around the house. One of them was the same man who had met with Father Michael at the diner. Ryan quickly gathered the most important documents and helped Sarah pack a small bag. They slipped out through the back door, just as they heard footsteps on the front porch. As they drove away in Ryan's car, Sarah clutched the box containing Ethan's discoveries to her chest. In the rearview mirror, Ryan could see the men entering the house, their movements purposeful and coordinated. They needed a safe place to continue their investigation, somewhere their watchers wouldn't think to look. Ryan remembered an old cabin belonging to his former partner, located deep in the woods outside of town. As they drove through the darkness, both realized there was no turning back. Whatever Ethan had discovered beneath the Church of Redwood Falls was big enough to make powerful people very nervous, and now they were caught in the middle of it all. The cabin's wooden walls creaked under the assault of the wind as Ryan and Sarah spread out their findings on an old oak table. Max lay alert by the door, his ears constantly twitching at every sound from the surrounding forest. The documents from Ethan's box had revealed something extraordinary. The Redwood Falls Church wasn't just hiding valuable artifacts, it was protecting what the Guardians of the Sacred Light believed to be proof of an ancient truth that could reshape history. Elizabeth Graves' diary proved to be crucial to her detailed accounts, though written in a complex cipher that Ethan had partially decoded, spoke of her father's real mission. Theodore Graves hadn't just built a church, he'd constructed an elaborate vault system to protect artifacts that his secret society had been collecting for centuries. But Elizabeth's final entry suggested she had discovered something that troubled her deeply about the Guardian's true intentions. "Listen to this," Sarah said, reading from a decoded page. "The artifacts Father protects are beyond valuable. They're dangerous in their power to change everything we believe, but I fear the Guardians no longer serve their original purpose. What started as protection has become possession, and with possession comes corruption. They must be stopped before—" The entry ended abruptly, just like Elizabeth's presence in historical records. While examining the architectural drawings, Ryan noticed something they'd missed before. The blueprints showed a particular pattern in the basement stone floor, one that matched a symbol found repeatedly in Elizabeth's diary. "This isn't just decorative," he realized. "It's a map. The pattern shows how to access the vault system." Sarah's laptop chimed with an incoming email. It was from Mrs. Henderson, the librarian. She had found something in the archives, a series of letters between Theodore Graves and a Professor James Sullivan from Harvard University, dated 1886. The professor had been helping authenticate the artifacts, but in his final letter, he expressed grave concerns about continuing his work. "These objects possess a power that we barely understand," he wrote. "The implications of their existence would challenge the very foundations of our society." As they delved deeper into the documents, they discovered that the Guardians of the Sacred Light hadn't originated in Redwood Falls. The society was centuries old, with branches across the globe, each protecting different pieces of a larger puzzle. The Redwood Falls Church was just one of many repositories, but according to Elizabeth's diary, it held something uniquely significant. A sudden bark from Max interrupted their research. Through the cabin's window, they spotted a flicker of movement among the trees. Someone had followed them. Ryan quickly dimmed the lights and moved to a better vantage point. In the darkness, he could make out several figures moving methodically through the woods, their paths converging on the cabin. But they weren't the only ones watching. As Ryan observed the intruders, he noticed another figure in the shadows. Someone moving with practiced stealth, tracking the men who were tracking them. The figure's movements seemed familiar somehow. Then it hit him. He'd seen that same careful, tactical approach countless times before, during his years working with Ethan. Sarah gasped as she made another discovery in the documents. "Ryan, look at this," she whispered, pointing to a photo tucked between the pages of Elizabeth's diary. It showed a group of men standing in front of the newly built church in 1887. But what caught their attention was a symbol visible on their rings, the exact same symbol they'd found on a ring in Father Michael's office earlier that day. The pieces were starting to fit together. The Guardians hadn't just survived through the centuries. They'd thrived, placing their members in positions of power and influence. Father Michael wasn't just a priest. He was their current gatekeeper, but something had changed recently, causing a rift within the organization. Ethan had stumbled onto this power struggle, and his discovery had set off a chain of events that now threatened to expose everything. Outside, the figures were getting closer. Ryan and Sarah quickly gathered their evidence, but they knew they couldn't escape without being seen. Just then, Max's ears perked up again, but this time his tail wagged slightly. He recognized someone out there in the darkness. The mysterious figure in the shadows was moving with purpose now, creating a deliberate diversion away from the cabin. They had an unexpected ally, but who? And more importantly, could they trust them? The mysterious figure in the shadows moved with calculated precision, creating distractions that drew the attention of their pursuers away from the cabin. Ryan watched in amazement as their unknown ally systematically dismantled the search pattern of the men in suits, leading them deeper into the woods. Sarah squeezed his arm and pointed to something she'd noticed. The figure was using old police tactics, the same ones Ethan had taught at the academy. Taking advantage of the diversion, they slipped out of the cabin's back door, with Max leading the way through the darkness. The German Shepherd seemed to know exactly where to go, following a path that kept them hidden from their pursuers. As they moved through the forest, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being guided somewhere specific. Their path led them to an old groundskeeper's cottage on the church property, hidden behind years of overgrown vegetation. Inside, they found signs of recent occupation, fresh supplies, maps of the church grounds, and surveillance photos of Father Michael and his mysterious visitors. But what caught their attention was a familiar jacket hanging by the door. Ethan's jacket. Before they could process this discovery, the cottage door opened. They spun around, ready to face another threat, but instead found themselves looking at a face they knew all too well. Claire Walker, Ethan's sister, stood in the doorway. She was supposed to be working overseas, but here she was, her expression a mixture of relief and determination. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out," Claire said, quickly securing the door behind her. She revealed that she wasn't really a foreign aid worker, as everyone believed. She was an operative for an organization that had been monitoring the Guardians of the Sacred Light for generations. "We call ourselves the Sentinels," she explained. "We've been working to prevent the Guardians from abusing their power." According to Claire, Ethan had discovered the truth about the Guardians' corruption months ago. The artifacts hidden beneath the church weren't just historically significant. They contained information that could expose some of the world's most powerful people. The Guardians had shifted from protecting this knowledge to using it for manipulation and control. Sarah pulled out Elizabeth Graves's diary, and Claire's eyes widened. "Elizabeth was one of us," she revealed. "She was the first to recognize that her father's noble mission had been corrupted. She tried to expose the truth, but disappeared before she could succeed." History is repeating itself with Ethan. Claire led them to a hidden cellar beneath the cottage, where they found walls covered with photographs and documents connecting members of the Guardians to suspicious activities across decades. In the center of it all was a massive chart showing the organization's current power structure, with Father Michael's name surprisingly low in the hierarchy. "The priest is just a pawn," Claire explained. "The real power lies with the Council of 12, and one of them is here in Redwood Falls." She pointed to a photograph that made Ryan's blood run cold. It showed the town's beloved mayor, Jonathan Hayes, wearing the Guardian's ring during a secret ceremony. As they absorbed this information, Max suddenly tensed. Through the cellar's small window, they could see car headlights approaching the cottage. Claire quickly moved to a hidden panel in the wall, revealing a tunnel. "This leads to the church's underground network," she said. "It's how Ethan managed to gather his evidence." Before they could move, Sarah found one last crucial piece of information in Elizabeth's diary, a hidden page revealing the true purpose of the church's construction. It wasn't just built to hide artifacts, it was designed as an elaborate puzzle box. The entire building was a maze of symbolic clues and mechanical triggers that, when properly activated, would reveal the Guardian's greatest secret. Claire's expression grew serious. "That's why they're all here now. In 3 days, during the centennial celebration of the church's founding, the mayor is planning to use the ceremony as cover for something big. Whatever they're planning, Ethan tried to stop it, and now he needs our help." As they heard footsteps above, Claire quickly ushered them into the tunnel. The time for investigation was over. Now they had to act. With less than 72 hours until the ceremony, they needed to solve Elizabeth's puzzle, find Ethan, and expose the truth before the Guardians could complete their plan. But as they moved through the darkness beneath Redwood Falls, none of them realized they were heading straight into a trap that had been centuries in the making. The tunnel beneath Redwood Falls Church was a marvel of 19th century engineering, its walls inscribed with symbols that matched those in Elizabeth's diary. As Ryan, Sarah and Claire followed Max through the darkness, the dog's behavior changed, his tail wagging excitedly as if he sensed a familiar presence ahead. The tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took their breath away. The chamber was filled with artifacts carefully preserved in glass cases, each item telling part of an ancient story. But what caught their attention was a modern surveillance setup in the corner, screens showing various parts of the church above. And there, hunched over a computer terminal, was Ethan Walker himself. The reunion was emotional but brief. They had precious little time. Ethan explained how he had discovered the truth about the Guardians while investigating a series of suspicious financial transactions linked to the church. The organization had evolved from protecting historical truth to manipulating it, using their collected artifacts and knowledge to influence global events from the shadows. But Mayor Hayes is planning something unprecedented, Ethan revealed, pulling up files on his computer. They're not just trying to hide the truth anymore, they're going to rewrite it. The Centennial Celebration is a cover for their biggest operation yet. The mayor planned to use the church's hidden mechanism to access their most powerful artifacts, not to protect them, but to destroy them, erasing centuries of evidence that could expose the Guardians' influence. Sarah's expertise in historical architecture proved crucial as they studied Elizabeth's puzzle. The symbols in the chamber aligned perfectly with the patterns they'd discovered in the church above. Each one was part of a complex mechanism that, when activated in the correct sequence, would reveal the Guardians' most closely guarded secrets. As the group worked to decipher Elizabeth's clues, they heard movement in the tunnel behind them. Father Michael emerged from the darkness, but not as the nervous man they'd been watching. His confidence suggested he'd known they would be there. "I've been expecting you," he said, but his voice carried no malice. "I've been waiting for someone to finally understand." The priest's revelation stunned them all. He wasn't working for Mayor Hayes. He was a double agent, planted within the Guardians by the Sentinels decades ago. He had been protecting Ethan, helping him gather evidence while maintaining his cover. The nervous behavior, the secret meetings, all part of an elaborate performance to keep the mayor's trust. With Father Michael's help, they began the intricate process of activating the church's hidden mechanisms. Each symbol they touched triggered ancient gears within the walls, the entire building coming alive with the sounds of machinery that had waited centuries for this moment. But they weren't alone anymore. Above them, the Centennial Celebration was beginning, and Mayor Hayes would soon discover their presence. The final piece of Elizabeth's puzzle revealed a truth more powerful than any of them had imagined. The Guardians' artifacts didn't just hold historical secrets, they contained evidence of how the organization had shaped world events, manipulating everything from economic markets to political movements. This evidence was what Elizabeth had discovered, what she had tried to expose, and what had led to her disappearance. As they worked to secure the evidence, Max suddenly alerted them to approaching footsteps. Mayor Hayes and his security team had arrived early for the ceremony, their voices echoing through the tunnels. They were now trapped underground, but Father Michael knew of one last escape route, the original tunnel that Elizabeth had used, hidden behind a false wall. In those final moments beneath the church, they faced a choice: escape with the evidence or confront the mayor during the ceremony. They chose both. While Ethan and Claire prepared to escort Sarah to safety with the documented evidence, Ryan and Father Michael would make their way to the ceremony. The truth would come out not in the shadows, but in front of the entire town. The confrontation that followed would become legend in Redwood Falls. As Mayor Hayes began his centennial speech, Ryan and Father Michael emerged from behind the altar, carrying Elizabeth's diary and the Guardian's own records. The mayor's facade cracked as they began reading Elizabeth's final entry to the assembled crowd, revealing the organization's true nature and their centuries of manipulation. In the chaos that followed, the mayor attempted to silence them, but the evidence was already spreading through the crowd. Phones recorded everything, and Sarah's secure uploads ensured the truth couldn't be buried again. The Guardian's power had always depended on secrecy, and in the light of day, that power began to crumble. The aftermath brought sweeping changes to Redwood Falls. The hidden chamber beneath the church became a public museum, its artifacts finally serving their true purpose, teaching history rather than concealing it. Elizabeth's diary was published, her courage finally recognized after more than a century. The Guardian's network was exposed worldwide, leading to a cascade of revelations that would take years to fully unravel. As for Ryan, Sarah, and Ethan, they had accomplished something remarkable. They had finished what Elizabeth Graves had started, bringing truth to light after generations of darkness. The secret passages beneath Redwood Falls Church no longer held mysteries, but they would forever tell a story of courage, perseverance, and the enduring power of truth. End of story. Dear viewers, we hope this tale of mystery, courage, and truth has captivated you as much as it did us. The story of Redwood Falls reminds us that sometimes the greatest mysteries lie right beneath our feet, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to seek the truth. If you enjoyed this journey through the secrets of the past, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. We've prepared a special playlist with equally intriguing stories that delve into the hidden histories of small towns across America. You'll find it linked to your left. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us about any mysterious legends from your own hometown. Remember, sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones waiting to be told. Stay tuned for more captivating tales delivered daily to our cherished audience. Until next time.